Today we're going to be continuing our series on looping backgrounds, and we got a cool one with metal waves today. I love the texture, I love the reflections, I love the color of this one, and I think you will too. As always, it's going to be easy and approachable using only stock plugins and effects. So go ahead and open up After Effects and let's get going. Alright guys, so we're over here in After Effects, have a blank project, and we're going to go ahead and get this set up. As always, I just want to thank you guys for watching, for taking the time to go through these and learn with me. I'm really grateful you all are here. So let's go ahead and start a new composition. I will click here, and I'm going to type in 1920 by 1080 square pixels. Frame rate, we'll keep it at 30, but you can adjust this to whatever project needs you have. And let's make this 15 seconds instead of 30 seconds as to what it was set at. And I'm going to go ahead and name this base. So we know that this is going to be our base layer for our animation, and you'll see why we named this comp as we get into the tutorial. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And to get this effect, we're actually going to use just one single shape layer with a path. And so let's go ahead and on our base layer, I'm going to right click, hit new, and shape layer. We have our shape layer here. So I'm going to go ahead and twirl down my shape layer and go over here to add, and let's add a path. And nothing's going to happen. It's not going to add anything. You know, when you add an ellipse or a different shape, it kind of adds the path for you. This isn't going to add a path for us because we need to draw it. So with our pen tool selected, let's go ahead and draw a nice path, just something that's going to have a gradual slope and a peak, nothing crazy. Let's go ahead and draw that out. Okay, so we have our path. I skipped over because I didn't want you guys to have to watch me kind of tweak this and everything, but I like how this looks. And so you can see it's just 4 points that we made this. So, you know, it kind of started here, came down, came up, and then came back down. Nothing crazy. So that's the path we're going to start with here. And I'm going to, now that we have our path, I'm going to actually add a stroke, and not this big chunky stroke we have here, but I'm going to go over here to add stroke. And now we have a stroke on our path. Let's twirl down stroke here. Right now it's super thin. You can see it's just at 2 pixels. I'm going to bump this to 10, give it some more weight. We'll keep it at white and everything else looks good. So let's twirl up stroke. I'm going to go to add and repeater. And this is where we're going to start seeing the shape take form. So let's twirl down repeater here. And you can see we have 3 copies. And I'm actually going to bump this way up to 100. So I'm going to type in 100. And I want 100 copies on this. And you can see now they're kind of continuing way off the screen here. So and then we're going to use this offset, and I'll come back to that in a second, but that's how we're actually going to get the movement that we want. So I'm going to twirl down this transform repeater right here. And by default, you can see the position adds 100 to the x-axis. I'm going to put that on 0. And we're going to do most of our stuff on the y here. You can see how it's coming off. We actually need to move that path up. So I'm going to set this to about 39 or 40. I like that 39 range as we were scrubbing through there. Now that I'm looking at this, let's bring this up to the top. So you see we have our bounding box. I'm just going to click and drag that up and kind of reposition this here. So we have 100 copies of this line. So we have a lot of room to work with. So maybe somewhere like right around there looks pretty good. Let's pull down our transform on our main layer here. And yeah, it looks like we're at about 800. On this x-axis, let's drop this to about 615, just to bring this over slightly. And then we're at negative 244. This was just where we positioned it. Yours could look different, but I'm going to drop this to maybe like negative 150. Yeah, I like how this is looking. Let's go up to back to our repeater, our transform repeater, and do some more work in here. So on our scale, I want to zoom in just a little. So I'm going to put that to 105, and you can see what a difference that makes already. So if I go back to 100, kind of have the even spacing, very close together. just bumping this to 105, I mean, adds so much with that fold right here coming up, and then we're going to get a lot of definition right here. I like how that's looking. On the rotation, this too, I mean, just 1 degree is going to make a heck of a difference. So we're at 1. Yeah, let's go to 2. 2 is nice, so we lose a lot of that line, and we can get, like I said, we can get that good definition on the fold here. So yeah, I like how this is looking already, just how these lines are sweeping in and folding over. So let's keep it right there. I'm going to twirl it by transform repeater. I'm going to twirl it with my main transform, and let's keep our repeater open, and our offset is what we're going to work on next. So like I said, this thing is going to move with this offset property, and this is really pretty much the only animation we're going to be doing to get this whole thing going. So as our base loop, we're going to depend a lot on these lines moving. And so that's the reason we have 100 copies, because we're going to move through these lines to make it look seamless. So on our offset, I'm going to bring this back. Let's go to -40 to start. And on our offset, let's hit the stopwatch to enter first keyframe. And I'm going to scrub all the way to the end, however you want to get there. Let's just go to the end, make sure you have 15 seconds. And let's bring this back. Okay, so it looks like right when we hit about -4 is where we kind of keep everything on screen. So you can see between -4 and -40 is kind of, we're ending on the same frame, as you can see that. And so that's what we want, all this movement starting to happen here. So we're going from -40 to -4. We don't want to go beyond that. If we start getting into the positives here, you can see we're coming off the screen completely. So let's make sure we're at -4 here. And let me just play through this. Yeah, that's looking nice. I love this kind of animation. Just really simple, and there's a lot we can build with this. So this is looking good so far. Very seamless. I want to do one more thing while we're in here. Let's twirl up our repeater now that we have our animation set. And I'm going to twirl down stroke again. And let's twirl down taper. And we're going to add some more clarity to these lines. You can see they're all the same width on the stroke. It's at 10 pixels. And so we kind of want to give that some indifferences throughout this thing. So nothing crazy right here. All we're going to do on the start length is type in 50%. And you can see how that's pretty much shrunk those lines. It's tapered them to where they gradually hit that 10 pixel width. Okay, awesome. So let's move on with this. I love how this turned out so far. Let's go ahead and make a new composition. I'm going to go over here and hit this composition button. That gives us a new composition. And we're going to call this comp FX. And let's make sure that it's the same as what our loop is, which it should be, unless you've created a new composition for some reason in the meantime. But 1920 by 1080 square pixels, 30 frames a second, 15 seconds long. Let's hit OK. And inside this FX layer, let's go ahead and drag our base layer in. The first thing we're going to do is add a black solid. And so I'm going to right click new solid. And same thing, make comp size, make sure it's 1920 by 1080. We're going to go black and hit OK. And we're going to go ahead and add 2 adjustment layers above this. I'm just kind of preparing our timeline for the effect we're going to put on. So I'm going to right click new adjustment layer, right click new adjustment layer. So we have 2 adjustment layers here. On this top adjustment layer, let's go ahead and call this spot blur. The second one, I'm going to just call this color. And this black solid, let's go ahead and call this one texture. Okay, awesome. So we have our timeline set up here. So let's go ahead and start building this thing up. So the first effect we're going to use is a plugin that's stock, and it's called Caustics. And so CAU, and that's all you had to type to bring that up. I'm going to go ahead and double click that Caustics, and it brings that up. And so what's really cool about this Caustics plugin is that it brings really good detail and reflections into our animations here. Kind of think of Caustics as the reflections you would see on the bottom of a swimming pool. When you look down, you see those really cool like shadowy reflections. Let's start with this bottom, and you can see that we have this layer selection here. Right now it's just selected to the layer that it's on, which is texture. I'm going to switch that to base, which is what we want. The next thing I'm going to do with this water surface is let's select the base layer again, because this is what we're basing our animation off of. So let's go down here, and you can see our base comp is reintroduced into this composition. And on the sky, I'm going to go ahead and once again hit base, and we're back to having our base animation in this FX comp. So let's go ahead and tweak some values here. We're going to do some on the water section here. So on the wave height, let's crank this up a bit. It's at 0.2. Let's go to 0.500. On our smoothing, this is at 5. I'm going to crank this to 10 and start seeing all this kind of definition being added. If I zoom in, you can see what I mean about these reflections, which is super nice. And this is going to turn out really cool. The water depth here, this is at 1.1. I'm going to put this to 0.500. And on our refractive index, this is at 1.2, but I actually want to drop this down. And so I'm just going to drop this to 1. In our surface color, you can see this blue that it's pulling. Let's just change that to black. And so with our surface opacity, this is at 0.3. I'm going to put this to 0.2. And the caustic strength, let's leave that at 0 right now. So our water's good. Next thing we're going to do is the sky here. And so the sky, we're going to scale up just slightly here. So I'm actually going to put this at 1.09. Make sure that's not 1.9, but 1.09. And on our repeat mode, I don't want that reflected. I want this tiled. And you can already see we're bringing in that reflective metal look almost. We're getting the shadows here, and it's going to look really cool. So, and if layer size differs, let's go to stretch to fit. And that's just kind of a fallback for us. On our intensity, let's go to 2. And on our convergence, let's go to 2. Okay, that looks good on those 3 sections. I'm going to go ahead and swirl down material here. And on our diffuse, let's crank that to 2. And that about sets us up for our color and spot blur. So let's hit color next. So I'm going to select the color layer. And on color, all I'm going to do is levels. Double click, let's bring that over. And there's just going to be some adjustments here. So on our input, I'm going to bump this to 115. And on our gamma, let's do, instead of 1, let's do 0.9. And I think that looks good right now. Kind of bringing out that chrome, or introducing more of those dark metallic-y shadows in these bright chromy highlights. And so with our spot blur, if you don't know what spot blur is, we're just basically going to focus right on a section. And this is kind of a workaround for it. There's definitely different plugins you can use, different ways to approach this, but this is just kind of my preferred way. So with my spot blur layer selected, I'm going to go over here and type in Gaussian blur, double click, and I'm going to bump this blurriness to 50. That looks good. We'll leave these two the same. And you can see it's kind of definitely toned down a lot of those harsh chromy highlights and shadows. I want to basically blur out these edges and then have the most noticeable definition like right in the center here. And how we're going to do that is I'm going to click on my spot blur layer down here, and we're actually going to create a mask with some feathering, and it'll give us that spot blur effect. So I'm going to come up here to my shape tools and click and find that ellipse tool here, which is the third one down. And with that selected, making sure our spot blur layer is selected, you can kind of see since we have that black circle and the white square, that means we're in masking mode. I'm going to go right in the middle here, and holding down Command or Control and Shift, I'm going to click and drag from the center there and keep it right about where I'm coming off the top and bottom of the comp here, right about there. And so let's invert this so we reverse that blur. So this should have popped up automatically for you. If not, you can just select your layer and hit M. And let's hit that inverted box. So basically we're just flipping that blur on the outside of the mask instead of the inside. And let's go ahead and hit F on our keyboard. You may need to hit that twice, and that's going to bring up the mask feather on that spot blur layer. And we're going to crank this way, way up. Let's start at about 300. And I'm going to hit V to come back to my selection tool and maybe play with these points just a little. And you can do this as you see fit. This is looking pretty good. So now that we have that selected, I'm going to click off here. And you can kind of see how we come out of focus maybe in the back here and on the edges here. And we get the really nice focus on these chromy lines that are coming through. So if I just play through this real quick. Yeah, that's looking really good. I like how that's moving. I like how that chrome's looking. I'm going to twirl that up. This looks good. We're going to create one more composition, and this is going to be our render comp. So I'm going to go over here and create new comp, and let's just call that render. Same settings, 1920 by 1080. You get the gist, 15 seconds, hit OK. And we're going to drag in our FX layer. If I play through this, you can kind of see at these edges, we're getting some weird kind of like bubbling, and I don't like that a lot. And so this is the reason we made this render comp, is we're going to take this FX comp, just hit S for scale. We go ahead and pause that. And I'm just going to bump this up to 110. And we're just going to remove that problem. And so you can see we've eliminated that kind of bubbling effect just by scaling that up. So let's twirl up our effects layer. Can go ahead and pause this. And with my effects layer selected, I'm going to hit Command D or Control D. And that's just going to duplicate our effects layer. And I'm going to set this blending mode to overlay. And let's go ahead and create two more adjustment layers. So adjustment layer, new adjustment layer. And I'm going to name this top one glow. And the second one tone. And that's how we're going to bring some of this color in here. But even if you left it just like this is great already. So the first thing we're going to do is click on this second effects layer that we set to overlay. And I'm going to go over here and type in Shift. And it's going to bring up the Shift Channels plugin. And I'm going to double click there. I'm going to turn red full off, green full off, and we'll leave blue on. And you can see we get this kind of nice blue that we're pulling from that channel since we turned off the red and green. But I'm going to bump this up on my position just a few pixels. And I'm just using my arrow keys up and down with my FX layer selected just to get that into position just a little. Like I said, I've only clicked my up arrow maybe 5 or 6 times. So I'm going to select my tone adjustment layer. And over here in effects and presets, I'm going to type in toner. And that brings up CC toner. I'm going to double click that, making sure it's on my tone layer. And so on our highlights, I'm going to go from a white to maybe a really nice red, almost like a coral. So I'm just all the way at the bottom of my spectrum and just right at the top here. This looks good. And on my midtones, I'm going to change this from this brown, and I'm going to go on my spectrum and hit a purplish color, maybe like a deep, deep violet. And these colors are subjective. You can do whatever you want. But this is looking good. I like that a lot. I'm going to hit OK. And on our shadows, let's just leave that black because we want to keep those shadows black there. And so that introduced a lot of really nice color in here. Let's go ahead and click on our glow. And we're going to go over here and type in glow and add this glow plugin. On our threshold, let's take this all the way to the top and go 99%. Because we don't want this to be too harsh, so we're just 1% under the max here. But on our radius, let's go to, let's crank this all the way to like 350. And you can see, especially over here, we really softened up that glow, which is nice. On our intensity, let's go about 1.5, brighten that up, and you can see again over here, we're really brightening up these nice parts that are coming together right here. And one thing I want to do to kind of pronounce this glow a little more, now that I'm looking at it, let's go ahead and base this glow on our alpha channel and not our color channel. That is very, very harsh. So let's go ahead and change that. And all we're going to do to change that is change some of these colors here. So on the color A, let's go ahead and maybe do a lighter purple. You can already see that's looking better. A lavender there. And hit OK. And then on our color B, let's change that from black just to like a nice red. Yeah, that looks really good. And you can see that kind of took the harshness off that white glow and just made sure those colors are popping through. One more thing I want to do here is soften these edges quite a bit. We can do that with a vignette, but I don't want to vignette this whole thing because I really like how this looks over here and I don't want to lose that. So one way we can do that without using a vignette, there's actually a fun plugin over here called Spotlight. And we're going to double click. This can just pop right into the glow here. Let's go ahead and play around with this. So you can see it does exactly what it says it does. We definitely don't want it that harsh. So let's play around with these values just a bit. So on our height, I'm going to go 70. And on our cone angle, which is this right here, you'll see how it's angled. We're going to go to 35. And that gives us a nice large angle to work with here. And on our edge softness, you can see how harsh this is. I'm probably just going to put this to 100%. On our intensity, let's just put this to 80. Nothing too major. It starts at 75, so we just want to add just a little bit. But the biggest thing here is going to change the position. So like I said, I want to reveal this more and soften these edges up over here. So I'm just going to grab my anchor point and just basically move this over to right about there. And let's just go ahead and tweak these values just a little bit more. I like where this is at. Let's just put this to negative 170. So I like these things a little more even. And negative 170. And so we're kind of up at this top corner here. And you can see we soften these edges a lot while keeping this part really pronounced, which is nice. And then we have obviously the main glow. So you can see where our spot blur is coming into play. It's blurring a lot of those lines right there, right here on the edges, but giving us nice definition. I'm going to change this to full so we can get a full view of this. And yeah, look how pretty that looks. And so if I play through this, you can see that we have this nice specular highlight here. We have these beautiful soft glows over here and these deep shadows on the edges. I just want to say thank you to you guys for sticking with me through this whole tutorial. This was a really fun one. Hopefully you learned something, especially on those caustics. And how to incorporate those maybe into a different project or use this one for a project of your own. As always, I'd love to see what you're working on. So hop over to Instagram and you can find me at Timmy Dwyer and you can tag me, use the hashtag Timmy Dwyer. And I'd love to see how you're using these loops in your projects. I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next tutorial. I'm having a lot of fun with these loops and I can't wait to keep going. Hope you all have the best day.